Hey everybody. So I realized that I made a video a few years ago where I did not show you the correct thing. This is a French seam. This seam right here, it's a way of taking two pieces of leather like this and joining them to create one continuous line of leather. Now we're going to use, I'm making a bag like this out of bright red La Perla, Missouri. This is one of my favorite leathers of all time. Buckle Guy now carries it. This is the red color. I do have a piece long enough to make one continuous gusset. However, by making a French seam with leather, we're going to get a bit more rigidity here so that it will keep our bag will keep shape. The other thing it'll allow us to do is use a thinner weight leather for the sides because we're going to have rigidity down here, and then when I finish the bag, we'll have the rigidity of our riveted side pieces here, and I'll have the rigidity along the top. I want to show you how to do a proper French seam in this video to make up for the fact that I showed you how to do the wrong thing a few years ago. Let's get into it. All right, so there is no way around it. You're gonna have to skive for this one. What I like to do, so I have my edges skived. That's another part of the bag that has nothing to do with the French seam here. What I'm gonna do for the French seam is I'm gonna measure 1 inch and draw a line. Now, we're gonna stitch in the middle here, a 1/2 inch in, but I want to skive kind of over here because when we fold this over, we want it to set down and be all one thickness. Now I do skive on granite. It does not hurt the blade because the blade never touches the granite. It bounces off. I have my skiving knife. This is the new skiving knife. I love the olive wood handle from Buckle Guy. These are back in stock. And I have this sharpened in the reverse way. So I'm using it bevel side down, and that allows me to do super long skives. It still works nice and sharp. It is not dulled down by sharpening it backwards, and I really only use this knife now because it allows me to do nice wide skives like this super easy. So you can see, take your time on this. I'm just slowly taking off layer by layer. And if we get a little too thin, that's okay. We're going to be covering this with another piece of layer over top of it afterwards. I'm going to take extra care to really make sure that we're almost paper-like along the edge because we want a nice blend. Once we have our nice deep skives here, we're going to go back in, and I'm going to make a line at a 1/2 inch now. This is going to be our stitch line. I'm going to get a little bit of double stick tape. This is just very temporary to hold these together while we punch our holes. I want it right at the top here because we don't want to go below our center line. So I'm using 5mm stitch spacing here. I like to use 5mm on bags because bags are kind of big, and when your stitch spacing is too small, it just kind of looks weird to me. We're going to use some main thread for this. I have a nice red that matches this. So let's get to stitching this real quick. Okay, once we're stitched here, I'm going to split this and lay this flat like this. Next thing I'm going to do is peel apart this section. Now if you want to take the double stick tape off, go for it. And what I want to do here is I'm going to take my 1/4 pounder. Now the reason we made the 1/4 pounder double-sided is so that you can polish one side and the other side you can set rivets or whatever you want to do with it. I'm going to take my polished side and I'm slowly hammering this flat. Now, this is going to be a full bend. And this leather I know really well, it's not going to crack. If you have like a veg tan or something that's a little dry, you might want to dampen this so that you essentially wet mold it flat, and that'll prevent any cracking. This Missouri leather is so packed with oils that it'll fold flat just fine. So I'm going to put some glue here. You don't want to go super crazy on your main piece here. Just stick within your 1/2 inch mark, because we don't want a bunch of extra glue showing on the bottom. Even though it's the inside of the bag, you want to keep everything nice and tidy. It's dry. We want to very carefully stick this down on either side. I like to go in with my finger first, just to make sure that I'm getting it, no bubbles. Then I'll go in with my hammer here. Really make sure that's nice and flat on both sides. Using an 1.25 inch because this is going to cover everything and make it nice and tidy. Now for skiving on this, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut. It doesn't have to be perfect because we'll trim everything later. I'm going to cut it basically to size, and then I'm just going to skive around the entire thing. So usually skiving on wallets and stuff I always say is optional. I don't really think this is skiving is optional on this one. You can use a French edger if you want instead. You could probably actually get away with not skiving the, like you want to skive these two ends because they're going to be tucked into your seam. If you don't want to skive the outside, I guess you probably don't have to do that. I'm gonna, but you probably don't have to. Pretty simple here. I'm just going to rough this up a little bit so my glue has something to stick to. Then, and remember, we have these lines that we made for 1 inch on either side. They're about 1 inch apart now because we sewed a 1/2 inch down the middle and folded it over. So I'm just going to try to keep my glue inside of those lines. Again, remember, this is going to be on the bottom inside of a bag. So odds are people aren't really going to see it. Our patch in, you can see I've left some trim allowance. Now when we make our stitch mark line, you can of course get your dividers, set them as wide as you'd like, and run a line down your seam. I just kind of eyeball it. And I'm aiming for this gap to be 3/4 inch-ish. I'm also not going to go all the way to the end because these are going to be where we stitch in this gusset to our bag, and we don't want to split any stitches. So I usually go about 3/8 inch from the edge. And here we go. So here's our finished French seam here. You see on the back, we have our 2 stitch lines connecting this piece to this piece by using our little bridge patch piece. And on the outside, we have a nice neat seam that is tucked inside, and then our 2 exterior stitch lines that looks really nice, like a nice classic upholstery look. I'm going to put this together with our front body piece so that you can see what a nice, neat, and tidy interior will look like with this style of construction. And here we go. So this is the finished front of the bag. You can see we have our binding, our piping, all that. On the inside, you can see here, well from the outside, we have our French seam looking nice and fancy. On the inside, even though it's not lined or anything like that, there's no binding on this seam, everything is burnished, everything is well sorted, and you can see our French seam on the inside, there's no folded seams or anything like that. It's nice and clean. So when you look down in the inside, nothing will get caught. There's nice washers here that I custom made for the riveted attachments. And that's one of the things I really like about this French seam. On top of, you can see how this is a little floppy, but when we have our binding on the top and the rigidity that this adds, I'm going to be able to use this 4-ounce side gusset, and I'll get my curves really nice, but we'll have the rigidity of this added stitch, the 2 added stitch lines in the seam. So that's going to be it for this one. I'm sorry I messed up the first one, but I'm happy to have it sorted now. Try out having a French seam in your next bag. I think you'll really enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.